You know that creepy feeling when the phone rings late at night? The one that jolts you out of whatever days you were in? Yeah, well, multiply that by about 1,000. It wasn't just late when it rang that night. It felt wrong, like the sound itself was cold. I was 16, maybe 17, babysitting for the Hendersons. Nice couple, 2 young kids upstairs fast asleep, supposed to be an easy gig. Just watch some TV, raid the fridge a bit. I figured maybe it was the parents checking in, though they usually texted. Still, got her answer right. That's the job. So I picked up the receiver, tucked it between my shoulder and ear, trying to sound way more awake and responsible than I felt. Henderson residence, I said, maybe a little too formally. Silence. Not just quiet, like someone deciding what to say, but dead air, like holding a seashell to your ear and hearing nothing but the absence of sound. Hello. Just a asterisk click asterisk. A single, sharp click, like the sound of someone gently hanging up the receiver on their end. Then the immediate, unmistakable drone of the dial tone. Weird, right? I stood there for a moment, phone still pressed to my ear, listening to that empty hum. A wrong number, obviously. That's what I told myself. People dial wrong numbers all the time, especially late at night. Maybe some drunk guy or an old lady mixed up the digits. Yeah, that had to be it. Maybe 10 minutes passed. The movie was some dumb action flick, wasn't really paying attention. The unease from that first call hadn't faded, just sort of simmered under the surface. Then it happened again. RRRNG, that same sharp, insistent sound cutting through the storm. This time I didn't hesitate as long, but my hand definitely shook a little as I reached for it, picked it up. Hello, silence again. But this time was different. It wasn't dead air. I could hear breathing. Okay, now I was genuinely freaked out. Wrong numbers don't usually involve heavy breathing. I slammed the phone down, harder than intended. My heart was doing a drum solo against my ribs. First thing I did, check the doors. Front door, dead-bolted, chain on. Back door in the kitchen, locked tight. Check the big sliding glass door in the living room, locked. All the downstairs windows I could easily reach, locked. Everything was secure. I tried to tell myself it was a prank. Some idiot teens messing around because they knew someone was babysitting. It was stupid, juvenile, but less terrifying than the alternative. I paced the living room for a bit, trying to calm down, keeping the volume low on the TV just so there was some asterisk noise besides the storm and my own frantic heartbeat. And then, shattering the relative quiet. R.I.G. Again, my blood ran cold. Check the children. My stomach plummeted. That question. It wasn't random. It was specific, targeted. Suddenly, the locked doors didn't feel so secure. Panic flared, hot and sharp. Without even hanging up, I think I just dropped the receiver, letting it dangle and swing by its cord. I bolted for the stairs. Took them 2, maybe 3 at a time, my sneakers thudding dully on the carpet runner. The hallway upstairs was dark, only lit by the occasional flash of lightning through the landing window. Across the hall was Tom's room. He was older, maybe 10. My hand was shaking as I pushed his door open. It was darker in here, no nightlight. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the room, bunk beds against one wall, posters, the usual kid stuff. And there he was on the bottom bunk, also sound asleep, mouth slightly open. Another wave of relief, weaker this time because the unease was digging in deeper. Both kids were safe, sleeping soundly. My mind raced. Did I miss this window earlier? No, impossible. I was meticulous. Panic turned into cold dread. I slammed the window shut, fumbling with the latch until it clicked securely. Backing out of the room slowly, pulling the door almost closed, my eyes darted down the dark hallway. Was someone asterisk in the house? Had they gotten in through that window? Before I could even process it, I heard it, faintly from downstairs. R.I.N.G. The phone. Again. How could they know I was upstairs? I stood frozen, phone pressed to my ear, listening to the absolute silence on the other end. Was he still connected? Just listening? Then I hung up deliberately, placing the receiver back in the cradle with a shaking hand. The silence in the house felt different now. It wasn't empty. It felt charged, like the air before a lightning strike hits close. And that's when I heard it. Over the relentless drumming of the rain, a faint sound, a scrape, like something heavy being dragged across. Tile. Holding the poker out in front of me like some kind of B-movie night, I crept towards the kitchen doorway. Each footstep felt incredibly loud on the hardwood floor, even over the storm. My breathing was shallow, ragged. Reached the doorway, peered around the edge. The kitchen was dark, lit only by the faint glow filtering in from the living room and the occasional lightning flash through the small window over the sink. Nothing seemed out of place at first. Empty counters, closed cabinets. My heart sank. Okay, they were inside. Locked doors didn't matter now. But wait, the calls, the voice asking if I'd checked the children after I went upstairs. How? Unless they weren't calling from outside at all. I remembered Mrs. Henderson mentioning they had phone jacks in almost every room, including one upstairs in their master bedroom, right next to the kids' rooms. The click I heard on that first call. Maybe it wasn't them hanging up. That realization hit me like a physical blow. Forget the back door, forget the window that might have been a diversion, maybe even done after they were already inside from who knows when. They were here, with me, with the kids. My grip tightened on the poker, knuckles white. My eyes darted towards the stairs leading up into that oppressive darkness. Just as the thought solidified, making my skin crawl, the phone rang. Ring. So loud this time, it made me jump violently. I stared at it, paralyzed. That creak, it wasn't the house settling, it wasn't the wind. It was slow, deliberate, like a footstep taken carefully, trying not to make noise but failing on an old board, upstairs where the kids were sleeping, where the other phone extension was. The sequence clicked into place with horrifying clarity. The first calls weren't a prelude, they were reconnaissance confirmation. They weren't trying to get in, they were already in, hiding somewhere, the master bedroom, a closet. I was frozen solid at the bottom of the stairs, poker held uselessly in front of me. Every nerve screamed at me to run, get out, call the police. But the kids, I couldn't just leave them. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating, broken only by the storm raging outside and the frantic thumping in my chest. Then, another creak from upstairs, slower this time. Closer to the top of the stairs, maybe. I didn't move, couldn't move. I just stood there, staring up into the blackness, waiting. It started like any other blizzard warning, you know. Get inside, stay inside, fine by me. I had nowhere to be. The wind was howling like something ancient and angry, throwing snow against the windows so hard it sounded like handfuls of sand. I was settled in, warm, flicking through channels, letting the blue light wash over the dark living room. Then I heard it. Under the wind's scream, a faint asterisk, tapping asterisk, almost rhythmic, coming from. I tried to shake it off, really did. Turned the TV volume up a notch, focused on some dumb reality show. But the house felt different now. Bigger, somehow, and emptier. The wind kept battering the walls, and every creak the old place made seemed amplified, deliberate. I kept glancing towards the front door, then the windows. It was like being inside a snow globe someone was shaking violently. Visibility outside was zero, just a swirling vortex of white. That tapping. Then came the scraping sound. Not loud, but unmistakable. Like metal dragging slowly across the wooden siding outside, near the back of the house this time. It lasted maybe 10 seconds, then stopped. Then started again, a low, dragging friction. My heart hammered against my ribs. Branches don't make that asterisk sound, not like that. This was methodical, purposeful. I muted the TV, straining my ears. There it was again, scrape, drag, stop, asterisk. Okay, screw this. I had to see. Trying to keep my breathing steady, I crept towards the kitchen window, the one closest to where the scraping seemed to come from. My footsteps felt thunderous on the floorboards, even though I was barely moving. The wind shrieked, making the glass rattle. I peered through a small clear patch I wiped on the frosty pane. Nothing, just white, blinding, endless white. The snow was piling up fast, already halfway up the window. My first thought was to call someone. Anyone, sheriff, neighbors, didn't matter. I fumbled for the landline phone on the kitchen counter. Cell service is garbage out here even on a good day. I lifted the receiver, pressing it to my ear. Silence. Not even a dial tone, just dead air. Utterly, completely dead. I slammed it down, then picked it up again, jiggling the hook switch. Nothing. The line was cut, or down because of the storm, maybe. I forced myself to think, to try and be rational, even though my insides were twisting with fear. Okay, check the doors, the windows, make sure everything's locked. I went to the back door first, the one near where I heard the scraping. Locked tight, dead-bolted, chain on. But then I saw it. Through the small glass panel in the upper half of the door, I looked down at the snowdrift outside. It wasn't natural. It was packed, too high, too steep against the door itself. not like wind-blown snow. Just as that horrifying thought settled in, I heard a new sound. From the front of the house this time, a muffled asterisk thump. Thump, thump, soft but heavy, and rhythmic, sickeningly so, like the scraping but duller, denser. It sounded like someone packing something down, packing snow against the front door. My breath hitched. I stood frozen between the back door with its unnatural drift and the front door where someone seemed to be building another one. Were they blocking me in? I had to see. I needed asterisk to see. Driven by a mix of terror and disbelief, I crept stealthily towards a side window, one that looked out towards the front yard, partially sheltered from the direct wind. The thumping sound was clearer here. Thump, scrape, thump. It was definitely shoveling. Someone was shoveling snow, packing it against the foundation, against the walls. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely wipe the condensation from the glass. Panic hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled back from the window, gasping for air. My mind raced. The front door. I had to check the front door. Maybe I was wrong, maybe it wasn't as bad as I thought. I lunged towards it, my hand reaching for the deadbolt, ready to fling it open and scream into the storm, confront whoever was out there. But my fingers fumbled against the cold metal. There was a small peephole. Heart hammering, I pressed my eye to it. Nothing but white. Back door, front door, windows. I scrambled around the downstairs, frantically checking every window. It was the same story everywhere. The snow line was rising, fast. What should have been loose drifts sculpted by the wind were solid, unnaturally steep banks of packed snow, deliberately piled against the glass. At the living room window, the snow was already 2/3 of the way up. The light filtering in was getting dimmer, turning the blue TV glow into a more oppressive, suffocating gray. I started yelling then, screaming, banging my fists against the thick living room window, the one they hadn't completely covered yet. "Hey, get away from my house. What do you want?" My voice sounded thin, pathetic against the roar of the wind and the solid thud of the packed snow. Outside, the shoveling didn't even pause. It was like they couldn't hear me, or worse, they didn't care. I hammered on the glass until my knuckles were raw, screaming until my throat was hoarse. There was no reaction. And then, for a horrible, heart-stopping moment, one of them looked up. I was still near the side window, the one where I'd first seen the figure shoveling. The wind must have shifted again, momentarily clearing the air right near the glass. The shoveling stopped. A dark shape detached itself from the wall of the house and turned, slowly. The hood obscured most of the face, but in the split second before the snow swirled back in, I saw eyes. Pale, reflective almost, like an animal's, catching the faint light. The light in the house was fading fast now. Every downstairs window was nearly blocked. Only thin strips at the very top let in any muted grayish daylight, or what passed for daylight in the blizzard. The air felt thick, heavy. Colder too, somehow, despite the furnace still kicking on intermittently. The scraping and thumping sounds were relentless, a constant reminder of the tomb being built around me. It felt like being underwater, submerged in snow and shadow. There was one window left with any significant view, a small, high window in the upstairs hallway bathroom. It was barely shoulder height from the floor. I dragged a small chair, climbed onto it, heart pounding with a desperate final hope. Maybe I could signal from here, break the glass, anything. Wiping the steam away, I peered out. The snow wasn't as high here yet, maybe only reaching the sill. The blizzard still raged, a dizzying chaos of white, but I could hear them below. I stayed there, balanced on the chair, watching the white chaos, listening to the sounds below getting closer, louder, scrape, thump asterisk, like a death knell played with snow shovels. Then through the swirling flakes, I saw them emerge from around the corner of the house. Not one figure, 3 of them, moving with that same eerie, unhurried purpose. Dark parkas, hoods up, faces hidden in shadow, shovels in hand. They didn't look at the window. You know that dead, quiet part of the night? The bit between 3 and 4 a.m. where the whole world feels like it's holding its breath. That's when I heard it. Just a faint scraping sound from downstairs, like fingernails lightly dragging across rough wood. Real slow. At first, I figured it was just the old house settling, maybe the cat batting something around, except we didn't have a cat. Sarah was fast asleep beside me, breathing softly, completely oblivious. I slid out of bed so carefully, trying not to make the springs groan. The floorboards felt freezing under my bare feet. Every tiny creak I made myself sounded like a thunderclap. I edged towards the bedroom door, my hand shaking as I reached for the knob. Downstairs, the scraping stopped. Silence again, but thicker now, somehow heavier. It felt like something was listening back, waiting. I peeked through the crack in the door, down the length of the upstairs hallway. Empty. I crept down the stairs, each step a gamble against the old wood protesting. The air got colder as I descended, thick with that musty, basement-like smell the ground floor always had after midnight. My eyes scanned the living room, plunged mostly in darkness, except for the slivers of moonlight filtering through the blinds, striping the furniture in ghostly white. Nothing seemed out of place. I made it to the back door, the one leading to the overgrown yard. My breath hitched. I stumbled back from the door, heart pounding like crazy. Was it a trick of the light? A tree branch playing mind games? It had looked so solid, so deliberate. I leaned against the cool plaster of the wall, trying to steady myself. Then I heard a floorboard creak upstairs. "Mark, honey, is everything okay?" It was Sarah's voice, sleepy but laced with concern. Her calling my name down into the darkness felt incredibly dangerous, like shouting our location to whatever was outside. I hurried back upstairs, practically leaping up the steps 2 at a time. Sarah was sitting up in bed, rubbing her eyes, silhouetted against the faint grey light filtering through the bedroom window. "What was it?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. I didn't want to scare her, but looking into her tired, trusting eyes, I couldn't lie convincingly. "I don't know," I admitted, my voice low and urgent. "I thought I saw someone outside, by the trees." Her face paled instantly. Sarah slipped out and across the hall. I heard the soft click of Lily's door locking a moment later. I went to the window in our bedroom, the one facing the front yard this time. Carefully, I pulled the heavy curtain back just an inch. Streetlights cast long, eerie pools of orange across the empty road and our dew-covered lawn. Nothing. No movement, no shadows out of place. But then from downstairs again, a new sound. Not scraping this time, but a soft, rhythmic thudding. Thump, thump, thump. Sarah came back into the room, her face tight with fear. "She's okay," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. She didn't even stir. She came to stand beside me, her hand finding mine in the dark. Her skin was ice cold. The thudding downstairs continued its steady, unnerving rhythm. Thump, thump, thump. "What is that?" she asked, her eyes wide. I shook my head, unable to speak. We stood there, paralyzed, just listening to that soft, insistent noise echoing up from below. Panic clawed its way up my throat. Sarah squeezed my hand so hard her knuckles turned white. Inside. It was inside. I fumbled for my phone on the nightstand, my fingers clumsy with adrenaline. Screen lit up. No service. Not a single bar. That wasn't right. We always had decent reception, even out here. I checked Sarah's phone, same thing. Dead silence where the signal bars should be. It felt like we were cut off, sealed inside this house with whatever had just slipped under our door. Then came the sound we both dreaded. The soft, metallic rattle of our bedroom doorknob being turned, slowly, deliberately, from the outside. It wasn't frantic, not like someone trying to force their way in. It was almost curious, testing the lock. Sarah let out a tiny, choked gasp and clamped her hand over her mouth. I instinctively backed away from the door, pulling her with me until our backs hit the cold wall by the window. No way was I opening that door. We stayed pressed against the wall, hardly daring to move. My mind raced, trying to think of a weapon, anything, an old lamp, too flimsy. Nothing seemed adequate against whatever was out there. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. Then a new sound started, faint at first, then clearer. Whispering, right outside the door. It wasn't English, not any language I recognized. I couldn't take it anymore. The not knowing, the whispering, I had to see. Against every shred of common sense, I pushed away from the wall and crept towards the door. Sarah tried to grab my arm, but I shook my head. I moved to the side, where the hinges were, and pressed my eye against the thin crack between the door and the frame. My heart hammered against my ribs, so hard I thought it would break through. Recoiled from the door crack as if burned, stumbling backward, gasping for air. I didn't need to tell Sarah what I saw. The look on my face said everything. That horrifying, stretched grin was burned into my retinas. The whispering outside intensified, growing louder, more layered, almost frantic now. And then the door buckled, not from a kick or a shoulder charge, but from something pushing against the entire surface, evenly, immensely. The wood groaned, the frame creaking under the impassable pressure. Suddenly the pressure stopped. The door relaxed back into its frame with a sigh of stressed wood. The whispering ceased. Silence descended again, absolute and terrifying. We waited, barely breathing, muscles coiled tight, expecting the final explosive assault. But nothing came. Seconds stretched into an eternity. Slowly, cautiously, I rose to my feet, every joint protesting. Sarah stayed huddled, watching me. I approached the door again, ears straining. Not a sound from the hallway, not a shadow under the door. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob, cold metal. I took a deep breath and turned it slowly. It clicked open. The lock hadn't been forced. I pulled the door open a crack, peering out. The hallway was empty. The single bulb still swung gently, casting those familiar dancing shadows. No distorted faces, no whispering entities, just the quiet, dusty old house settling around us. "Anything?" Sarah whispered from behind me. "No, nothing," I replied, my voice hoarse. "It's gone." I turned back to Sarah, who had followed me into the hall, a fragile smile touching her lips. "See, safe," I murmured, reaching for her. But as I looked back towards our bedroom, my blood ran cold all over again. The smile froze on my face, reflected dimly in the dusty, full-length mirror hanging on the wall opposite our bedroom door wasn't just the empty hallway. Behind my own reflection, standing just inside the doorway of our still-open bedroom, was the figure. Look, the weirdest part, the part that still makes my stomach knot up just thinking about it, is how asterisk normal the evening started. Rain lashing against the windows, cheesy horror movie on the TV, just another Tuesday night alone. I went to call Sarah just to check in, lifted the landline receiver. And nothing, not even static, just dead, empty silence. It wasn't like a disconnected signal, it felt heavier somehow, like the line itself had been choked. My first thought was Branch. It had to be. This old house groans and complains all the time, especially in storms. The wind probably snapped something loose, dragging it against the wood siding. Yeah, that made sense. But the silence from the phone still nagged at me. It felt intentional. I muted the TV, the silence rushing and felt way too loud now, punctuated only by the drumming rain. I strained my ears, listening. Nothing, just the weather. The street lamp outside casts these long, dancing shadows across the lawn, making everything look twisted and wrong. Nothing seemed out of place at first. Just the wet grass, the slick driveway, the rain coming down in sheets. Then my eyes snagged on something near the corner of the house, right where the phone and cable lines run down from the pole and connect near the foundation. It was hard to see clearly through the downpour, but there was a shape, low to the ground. Crouching. No, it was just. Okay, panic started bubbling up then. Forget the movie, forget being jumpy. Someone deliberately cut the lines. Why? To stop me calling out. Or maybe to stop someone calling asterisk in. The scrape I heard, that was them. They were outside. Asterisk, they still outside. I backed away from the window slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs like it wanted out. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a gunshot in the sudden silence. I stood frozen in the hallway, straining to hear anything over the storm. Where would they try? A window? The back door was old, maybe the lock wasn't as strong as I thought. My mind raced through worst-case scenarios. What did they want? Was it just a robbery? Cutting the phone lines felt personal somehow, more methodical than just smashing a window and grabbing what they could. It suggested planning, patience. It suggested they knew I was here, probably alone. The scraping sound hadn't repeated. Then came a sound that wasn't the storm. A faint, metallic asterisk click from downstairs, near the kitchen side of the house. It was sharp, distinct, and immediately followed by a soft asterisk thud asterisk. My breath hitched. That sounded like a window lock being jimmied, or maybe broken. I didn't wait to find out. Adrenaline surged, making my hands shake. Upstairs. I made it to the top of the stairs, my heart feeling like it was going to explode. I glanced back down into the darkness. Nothing moving, but I could asterisk feel a presence down there. You know that feeling? Like eyes on your back even when you can't see anyone. I slipped into my bedroom, the darkest room at the end of the hall, and softly closed the door, leaving it just a crack open so I could maybe hear something. I fumbled for my cell phone in my pocket, the screen illuminating my terrified face. The closet. It was deep, full of old coats and boxes. Not original, I know, but it was the only real option. I slid the closet door open as silently as possible. The damn thing always creaked, but tonight it seemed to cooperate, gliding almost noiselessly on its runners. I squeezed inside, pulling the door almost completely shut, leaving just the tiniest sliver open so I could see a thin slice of the bedroom. It smelled musty, like old clothes and forgotten things. My muscles screamed from crouching, but I didn't dare move. The footsteps stopped at the bottom of the stairs. Silence again, stretching for what felt like an eternity. Were they listening? Could they hear my heart pounding, which felt loud enough to shake the whole damn closet? Then slowly, agonizingly, the creak of the bottom stair. And another. They were coming up, step by step, methodical, unhurried. This wasn't someone panicked, grabbing valuables. This was someone searching, someone looking for something. I heard doors opening and closing down the hall, the bathroom first, then the guest room, slow, deliberate searches, then silence again. They were right outside my bedroom door now. I could hear faint breathing just on the other side of the wood. Oh God. I held my own breath, pressing myself further back into the musty coats, trying to become invisible. The doorknob started to turn, slowly, silently. They took a step into the room, then another, heavy boots on the floorboards. I could see legs now through the crack, dark jeans, sturdy work boots, wet from the rain. They moved slowly, methodically scanning the room, past the bed, paused near the dresser. Their movements were calm, too calm, like they knew exactly where everything was, or like they had all the time in the world. My heart was trying to beat its way out of my chest. I could feel sweat trickling down my temples despite the cold fear. I swear I stopped breathing entirely, waiting for the door to be ripped open, waiting for the light to flood in, waiting for whatever came next. A hand reached out, the shadow appearing on the sliver of wall I could see. Fingers brushed against the closet door. And then, nothing. The hand retracted. The footsteps turned, moved away from the closet, across the room. They paused by the window for a moment, maybe looking out into the rain-swept backyard. I stayed frozen in that closet for what felt like hours, even after the footsteps faded downstairs. Was it a trick? Were they waiting silently down there? Eventually, the only sound was the rain, back to its steady rhythm. Cautiously, painstakingly, slowly, I pushed the closet door open. My legs were stiff, shaking uncontrollably. I scanned the room. Empty. Looked out into the hallway. Empty. Still gripping my useless cell phone, I crept towards the stairs, listening with every ounce of my being. Silence. I crept downstairs, checking every shadow, every corner. The kitchen window lock was asterisk broken, just a small, neat crack in the frame, easily forced. Nothing seemed stolen, though. My wallet was still on the counter, laptop untouched. It felt wrong. The silence was heavy, oppressive. I made my way to the front door, half expecting to find it wide open, but it was still locked, dead-bolted, just as I'd left it. Same with the back door. How did they leave? The broken kitchen window, maybe. That's when I saw it. On the small table next to the armchair, the one where I usually toss my keys. It wasn't there before, I know it wasn't. It was a small, plain white envelope. My name wasn't on it. Nothing was written on it at all. My hands were trembling so bad I could barely pick it up. Inside wasn't a note. It was a photograph, Polaroid style, grainy, slightly blurred from movement. It was a picture of me, sleeping in my bed, taken from the doorway of my bedroom, the angle.